The Gumroad version of this series just got updated to include a 3D modeling guide PDF. Not only does it include this guide, but it also includes our final LoveChan model that we'll create in this series, downloadable videos, a short video series that introduces you to the fundamentals of using Blender, and more. Price of the Gumroad version will increase after this series is completed in full, so if you want the absolute best value on it, tap that link below today. Now let me show you how I did the remainder of the UVs on LoveChan here. And to show you that, of course, it would be wise to reference what our final 3D model ended up looking like and how I got it looking the way it does. So this is what our final LoveChan model looks like. You can see I have the UV editor open right here. I just made a new UV editing workspace. And from this model, there's going to be a few really important things I want to point out. First of all, every model that we made that is mirrored, we only need to do the UVs on that one side. Because the model is mirrored, it will automatically mirror the UVs that we do on one side to the other. And whenever I'm doing UVs, I literally just turn off my mirror modifier. So I click on my object, I go to this modifier properties tab, and I press this little monitor icon to disable the viewing of this mirror. This does not actually disable the modifier. This just temporarily makes it invisible, so it's a little bit easier to do your UVs. So I'm also gonna do that in the shoes here, turn off this mirror modifier, turn off the mirror modifier in the arms, turn off the mirror modifier in the hands, and I think that is about it for this one. It just makes your life a lot simpler when you're only UVing one thing, and you can always enable it when you're done doing the UVs. So with that out of the way, let's explore how I did the UVs on the feet here by clicking on them in object mode, going to edit mode, and selecting all of our faces on this model. So with that selected, we're gonna notice some things here that are kind of interesting. First of all, I overlapped the UVs on my model here. So these UVs and these UVs are totally overlapped like this. And there's a clarification I need to make from the last video where I said that UV overlaps are like fine and kind of a non-issue. That is definitely not always the case, and I apologize for saying it like that. Because when you are working in a game engine like Unreal or Unity, having overlapping UVs like this can actually cause issues when you're baking light maps. So in Blender here, I really don't think that's gonna cause too many issues that I know of, but just so you know, that can cause issues in certain game engines. That is not always the case. That is not the case with every game engine, but for certain game engines, that can be an issue having overlapping UVs. Now, personally, in this tutorial, if we have a few overlapping UVs, I don't really care. It's not really a big deal. Especially if your model's only going to be living in Blender, I wouldn't even worry about it, but that's just something to keep in mind, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to mention out of the way. Second thing I wanted to mention is that this texture map for LoveChan is very, very deeply imperfect. And the reason for that is this texture map was made kind of early on while I was still learning how to optimize these UV maps the best I could and learning the workflows and processes. Now, if we go over to a low poly model I made after this, however, you're gonna notice some improvements. So if I go to another UV editing workspace right here, and if I go to the shading rendered preview, and this low poly model, by the way, is available to download in the Gumroad version of the course. So you not only get this model to download, which you can reference the UVs on, and they're also fully rigged, but you also get this model in the low poly course on Gumroad. So definitely check those out today if you want to reference these UVs yourself or if you want to reference the rigs. So if I go to this model and open up the texture sheet here, you're going to notice that things are packed a lot more tightly together. The hair is not taking up nearly as much as the UV map as it was on this one. The face only takes up a pretty small part of the UV map in this LoveChan texture, but that ended up getting much bigger on this one to the point where it's taking up, like 10 or 15% of the whole UV map. And I say this because as you're making textures, as you're making your own 3D models, you're gonna slowly get better and better at this stuff and find different workflows and different ways to optimize this space a lot better. It's going to look a lot better. It's going to be a lot more texture efficient. You're going to learn how this process works, and you're gonna go back and forth between making the UV map, making your model, and you're going to adjust things and kind of iterate upon them over time. And this is not something you're going to nail at first. You're going to have a UV map at first that you'll slowly realize, oh wait, I should have did it like this, should have did it like this, and that's not a bad thing. If those are the realizations you're coming to, that means you're learning. That is not a bad thing, and just know that UV mapping is super annoying. It's not something that most people enjoy doing at all. It's kind of based on math, but it's also not that difficult. It is really not that difficult, and once you get the hang of it, it actually does become pretty fun to do and experiment with. So, with all that out of the way, let's talk about Love-chan here. So now let's do the UVs on Love-chan's feet here. And you can see on the left, we have the finalized Love-chan model in Blender. So this is a different Blender window. And on the right, this is where we were in Blender. And I'm keeping these open at the same time, just so you have a reference point for how I did the UVs on this model, so you can kind of reference them and go back and forth. But again, it's going to be a lot easier if you have the Gumroad version of the model, so definitely get the Gumroad version of the series today if you want the easiest way to reference this model. But in any case, I'm going to go into edit mode by clicking on my feet, pressing tab. I'm going to also turn on screencast keys, Then I'm going to disable this right here, which is the mirror modifier, because I don't really want that right now. You can just disable it in edit mode by pressing this one. So honestly, I'll just press that. So I'll go into edit mode, go to my modifiers tab, and click right here to just disable the modifier in edit mode so I can UV this a bit easier. And with that all out of the way, I have to make sure that I have my Love-chan body texture open so I can UV this properly. And again, make sure you're in the rendered view, press Z, go to rendered view to make sure you're in rendered view while doing this. So I'm going to select all three faces on the side of my shoe and press U and go to project from view. And of course, that has done nothing yet because this object does not actually have the material that we made for the face and head here. That has not yet been applied to the feet. So I'm going to click on the material properties tab, go to Love-chan body. So we actually have that material visible. It's only going to show up in rendered view. Remember that it's only going to be visible in rendered view. So with that out of the way, I'm going to select all three of these faces and press U, project from view. With that done, I'm going to press A to select all in the UV editor, G to move them over, S to scale them down. And again, project from view is just a really handy and quick way to unwrap simple shapes like the ones you have in low poly models. However, you have to realize that it is not always the best choice. This is not always the best way to unwrap your models in 3D. And other unwrapping methods like Unwrap or Smart UV Project, which you can see right here, Unwrap and Smart UV Project, those can often work a lot better for more complicated models with curved surfaces. But for planar models, which is what, this low poly aesthetic has a lot of, you can kind of just get away with having a project from view based approach like 90% of the time. It's really not too big of a deal. So with all of that out of the way, we now have this kind of lined up on our model here. And what I like to do when I'm UV wrapping is hide overlays. And to do that with a hotkey, that is Shift-Alt-Z. So Shift-Alt-Z. Shift-Alt-Z to hide overlays like that. And that's looking pretty good. So with that done and out of the way, I'm going to go to the opposite side and press Shift-Alt-Z so I can see overlays again. Click, click, click. And I'll go to the orthographic view here. Once again, view U, project from view like so. And now we're going to kind of line that up with where this one was. So G, so I'm going to press A to select all, G to move it. And you're going to notice this is actually inverted, right? We want this to be the opposite of what it looks like right now. And to do that, I'm literally just going to scale it on the x-axis. So I'm going to select all, press S to scale, then press X on my keyboard to scale on the x-axis. And then when this little resize thing appears, I'm going to make sure that my scale on the X value is exactly -1. And then I'm going to just line it up like so. Kind of like that. And Shift-Alt-Z to hide my overlays, see how things are looking. That looks fine so far. So now I'm going to select the back of my shoe here, press U, project from view, then I'm going to get my faces again, then move them over into this, nebulous zone, because that's kind of what I did in my UV map here. This is all just like one color, and you kind of can get away with that. You can get away with a lot of bullshit in your UV map, and it's kind of surprising how much people won't notice. Pardon my language. So if I click on the bottom of my foot here, for example, the bottom of my foot in my final model is literally just black pixels. So in my model here, I'm just going to select this bottom face, go to U, project from view, select this face, and just move it into black pixels like so. And that looks perfectly fine. So now we want to actually do the front of our shoe, of course. So we did the side, did both sides of the shoe. Now we want to do, and we did the bottom. Now we want to do the front. Actually, first I'll do the top of the shoe, which again was just solid pixels. So I'm going to select this top face. Again, if you can't really see what I'm doing, I'm just selecting this top face here, and then I'm going to U, my camera angled from here, U project from view. That's another thing to keep in mind. Every time you're projecting from view, that is from the perspective. You're projecting your 3D model from the perspective of your 3D camera, which is why this was like kind of at an angle here when I projected from view. If I did this at like a really like harsh angle like this and then did U project from view again, it's just going to look like that. It's literally taking a snapshot of the perspective of your camera in the 3D viewport and projecting that onto 2D space, right? So I'm going to make sure my camera is all the way up here and do project from view like that, because we do not want that in when we are doing our UVs. We do not want a super harsh angle when we're doing our UVs like that, because it's going to create really bad distortion in our UV map. So I'm just going to select this, go back to the shading preview by pressing Z, then going to rendered. I'm going to select this UV and move it into this space like so. And I hope you're starting to realize this is definitely not rocket science. Anyone can do this. It is not that complicated. It is just a bit annoying, but it can be fun. I do think it is fun sometimes. So I'm going to select these front faces right here. So select this face, this face, this face, go to front view, U, project from view, and sort of grab this and line it up with our shoe here. You can see in the final model right here, I kind of moved these faces around a little bit, or excuse me, move these vertices around. Because, again, remember what I just said about you don't want to do a project from view from like an angle like this, because you get really bad texture distortion in your UV, because it's not going to be a very good projection of your 3D model into a 2D space. That's going to be the same with this right here, because, you know, if in our front view, these are perfectly lined up to the perspective of our front view camera. So these two are fine. This one is problematic though, because the perspective of this from our front view camera is at like a, I don't know, 30-degree angle. It's way off. And you can see just by looking at it that there's this crazy distortion going on here. It's very, very pixelated, whereas this looks perfectly fine. So to fix that, we're going to select these three faces again. And what I did here in my UV map is I kind of just squished things over. That's one way of doing it. Again, this texture map is far from perfect. I don't want you to think this texture map is perfect. It's just a jumping off point as you learn how UV mapping works. So I'm going to press 1 to go to vertex select in the UV editor. So just like you can switch 1, 2, 3 to go to vertex select, edge select, and face select in the 3D viewport, you can do the exact same thing in the UV editor. So I'm going to press 1, make sure I'm in vertex select, and kind of slide these verts over with G and then X. And I'm going to just reference how I did this, because I did it in a way to reduce distortion when I did my projection. And then I'm going to grab these and move them down. And look at that. You can watch this distortion become a little bit lower as I kind of move things around in my UVs here. And again, you're not going to find too many great tutorials on doing UVs in Blender, I've noticed, because it's really kind of a thing you need to just do to understand how it works. It's really hard to describe. People are a lot more like stream of consciousness when they're explaining how this works, because it is just a weird thing you just do. It's not complicated. There's still a lot of distortion here. Maybe I should move this up. I'll move it down a bit. I'll move this as well, so there's not like horrible distortion. Move that down. Again, the UVs here were not done in an ideal way, but that is totally fine. So I'm going to hide my overlays by pressing Shift-Alt-Z. And that is looking pretty good. You can mess with this more so if you want to get things lining up a little bit better. For example, right here, I'm noticing that I could have lined this up a bit better. So I'm going to click on this, make sure I'm in vertex select, and move these up in my UV editor, move them down rather. And then I'm just going to kind of orbit around my model to see how my seams are looking. And I can see that these are a bit misaligned, so I'm going to click on this front face, press G, or A rather, and then move it up a little bit. So it kind of lines up, but that's still a bit rough, so I'm going to scale it down. And then press G plus Y to move it a bit. And that's good enough, because something you also have to keep in mind is that this is the feet. There's a really easy... It's so easy to get perfectionistic when you're doing UVs, where it's like, oh, there's all these seams, there's all these errors, I need to fix them, and you spend like 3 hours trying to make them perfect. it's not worth it. Like, these are the feet of your model, right? Unless you're like doing something super professional, you just need everything to be absolutely perfect. A lot of the time, it's just like, just move on. It does not need to be perfect. Like, the feet are such a small thing. If you want to spend time being perfectionist in the head, the face, the hair, other like focal points of your model, that's fine. But don't get lost in the details. Don't get lost in the sauce. Don't worry about it. It's going to be good enough. So I'm going to say that these feet are definitely good enough for this tutorial. You can spend more time on them if you want, but again, don't try to make them perfect unless you are enjoying it and you want to learn more. So again, I'm going to go to my modifiers tab on my legs here. I'm going to turn off this edit mode preview. Then I press tab to go into edit mode, the front view, select my leg here, and I'm going to see that is not unwrapped yet. That's why it's like covering the whole face here. So I'm going to preview how I did this on my final model here. Select the leg, go into edit mode here, look at my legs geometry, and there's a few more edge cuts here. We're going to get into that later. Don't worry about it for now. And once again, we need to apply our material to our model. So I'm going to go Material tab, New, Love Chan Body. And I'm going to press Add tab to go into edit mode, which will automatically hide this leg because of this setting we just turned off in the modifiers tab. Whew. So to unwrap our legs here, I'm going to press U on my keyboard, go to project from view, and I'm going to slide these on over in our UV map to where the leg texture is. Scale them up, move them down a little bit like that, like so. And orbit around my model, press Shift Alt Z, see what we're looking like. That's a problem that we're going to have to fix. But we're done. Like, this doesn't need to be perfect, right? This is totally good enough in my opinion. It's just this where it's like, well, we probably want to fix that. So this is another part of UV editing that I kind of want to talk about. And this is a kind of strange way to solve this problem, but it's something I like to do anyway sometimes, because when we are rigging this model, we're definitely going to want more than one edge loop here anyway. So for my case here, I'm actually going to go into edit mode by pressing tab and make sure I have the loop cut tool selected. And I'm going to go back into, by pressing Z, I'm going to go to solid view so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Then I'm going to place an edge loop here. Actually, I'm going to go back to rendered view. Is that all right? Let's do it lower. Never mind. I'll just do it in rendered view. So I'm going to place an edge loop right above where this is going right here. And I'm going to place another edge loop right here where this is going. So you can actually mess with the model's geometry in order to get your UVs looking better. And I'll explain what that means in a second. So with those two new edge loops above and below our like kneecap here, I'm going to go back to the selection tool and I'm going to press Alt A to make sure I have nothing selected. I got to make sure I'm on face select. So I'm going to press 3, make sure I'm on face select. Then we'll select all these new faces we just made. Then I'm just going to move them up like that. And bada bing, bada boom, we solved our problem. That seems jank. That seems like, wait, you can do that? But you can. You can absolutely do that sometimes. So now our legs are done. Especially because, again, when we're rigging this later, we're not just adding this extra geometry for the sake of UVs. This is also going to help us tremendously when we are rigging our model. So now with that out of the way, I'm going to move on to the next part of our model, which will be the hand. So with the hand selected, again, material tab, get that Love Chan body material on there, which looks very strange right now. And I'm going to look at how I did this on my final model. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go to tab and click on these two faces right here. Again, if you want to see what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing, clicking these two faces. And I'm going to press U, project from view, and move this on over like so. Go to the front view in my reference to see how I did this. Yep, that makes sense. That is super duper easy. I think I rotated it a little bit as well. Like so, but again, doesn't really matter. It's very stylized. I think I inverted this actually. I did. Interesting. So I'm going to press scale. So S, then X. So I'm going to press select everything, S, X, and then make sure the scale is on -1 on the X axis right here in the resize tab. And I'm gonna kind of rotate this and move it in place like that. There we go. So now that that's done, I'm pretty sure this is just solid colors except this part. Yeah, it is. And because, again, this is flat shaded, I can literally just select this top face, project from view, move it down, just have this flat shaded. So just like this face, have that flat shaded. It's like these two back faces. Press U, project from view, move them over. Avoid having overlapping UVs here, but again, not a huge deal unless you're doing something very specific here. Like this one, you project from view, it's over. You can always get rid of overlapping UVs when you're done with your model. That's not too hard. So now I'm gonna select this part of our model right here. Do both at once. Ooh, that's terrible alignment. My model is not perfect, y'all. However, no one has noticed this until just now. You gotta think about that. Like, I'm the only one who notices this, I'm sure. So I'm gonna select on this. Then it looks like I really scaled this in a weird way. So I'm gonna select these two top verts, making sure I'm on vert select by pressing 1 in the UV editor. Move these down, move these up. That looks odd. How did I do this again? Oh, so this is upside down. So I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. 180. Interesting. I'm going to double check how I did this on my model. This is why referencing is so useful, because I don't remember this stuff a lot of the time. Interesting. So it looks like I did put the face like here and here. So I'll kind of replicate that here. This up. This down. Oh, wait, is this inverted? Let me scale this. I'm going to scale this on the y-axis. -1. Yes, it is. Right? No, it is not. See, this could be a little confusing, but you really just have to experiment this stuff. There's not a perfect way of doing it. You kind of just gotta mess around and be like, okay, how do I replicate what's in my turnaround drawing that I made? You know, you just got to think about that. And whatever method you use to get there is fine. So I'm going to say that's good enough. I'm going to select this face right here. You project from view, and I can select both of these faces and kind of line them up. However imperfectly, you kind of line them up like this. Just kind of do something like this. Like so. And that looks pretty terrible. So I'm going to just select this face and kind of get it looking less terrible. Hopefully. Zoom in. Move these over, and I'm not talking about the hotkeys I'm using because you already know these. These are just the hotkeys we use to navigate the 3D viewport. That's all I'm pressing and just moving this stuff around. And don't feel like you need to follow me perfectly because you really do not need to do that. And that's still very jank. So I'm going to see if I can fix this a little bit. But again, it does not need to be perfect at all. I'm going to hide overlays with Shift-Alt-C. Select this face. 3 on my keyboard, just line this up like that. Select these verts by pressing 1, this box selecting, and line them up like so. And that's still not perfect. You can see it's not perfect, but you zoom out and it's like, literally who would notice that, you know? There's a certain point you get to where it's just like, you know, who cares? Like, who cares? No one is going to notice or care about that except you. So in my case here, I'm going to say that hand is good enough and move on to the next part of our model, which I'll say is the arm here. So I'm going to again reference my model here on the left, see how I did this. Click on my arm, and I did some interesting things here. So this is another part of making a texture map that I'd like to talk about, which is kind of about when you're, let me select my model here so I can show you what I mean. Oh, I have viewports overlays disabled. So if you don't see your selection, you're freaking out, don't worry. Press Shift-Alt-C to turn them back on again. If you can't tell, I don't normally use that hotkey. I have it bound to my mouse. But that's what it is, so that's what I'm going to teach you. So for this model here, you're going to notice these 3 shades of red. I used this to shade this arm. So in my texture map, I just had a light red, a deeper red, and like a super deep shadowed red. And all I did was project from view, grab these faces, scale them down, and kind of just put them in their area. And of course, we don't see anything because I forgot to go to the material tab and get the Love Chan body material on this. Now we can see what we're doing. So now that I have this all enabled, you're going to see that this is literally just a flat color. This is a flat color. This is a flat color. I hope this is starting to seem boring. That's good, because that means you can tell that this is actually not complicated what I'm doing at all. It's kind of just laborious. But it can be fun. I will say it can be fun. So with that being a flat color, I'm going to select this face, this face, this face, and this face. And this face? Yeah. And you project view, grab them, put them into this shadowed color right here. Go back to the object mode to see what I'm doing. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to go back to the back part of this arm, select all these faces, this, and this face. You project from view, grab, scale it down. And that's looking pretty not good because that's a shadow one. So I want to move this up. There we go. Awesome. So on the top of our model here, we actually have this line that continues because I have this arrow texture. But before we do that, I want to get this bottom part in, which is shadowed because I wanted it to feel like this part was in shade. So I'm going to click on this face. You project from view, grab this face, move it into this shadowed part, like so. This is like the deep shadowed part. This is like the middle shadowed part. It's looking pretty good. And all the bottom part of the arm here is this like middle shadow. So I'm going to select all these faces in edit mode. Yep, all these faces. You project from view and move them over to this middle shadowed part. So that's looking pretty good. I think, oh, so these faces are actually supposed to be in the deeper shadowed part. So I'm going to move them down like that. Looking good, looking good. All right. So now we want to do this part here, which is a little different the way I did it. So I'm going to select this front face, this back face, go to the front view, you project from view. And I want to line this up with this part. But I'm also going to select this face and this face. Do you project from view, then select all of these faces like so. A to select all and move them over. Select this face, move it over. And scale these like so. I think I had this. Let's see how I did it on my model here. Yoink. Yeah, I kind of just line them up so that they're kind of smaller than this. I'm going to press G, S, kind of move them over like this. Back to edit mode just so I can see what I'm doing. You do kind of want the scale of these to be the same. So I'm going to select my verts here and kind of like line them up and see how that looks. Might not be, oh no, we don't want to do that. Haha, never mind. But you do want the scale of them to be roughly the same. And this one feels a little bit bigger than the other, so I'm going to scale it up like that. But we don't want these little weird lines, so I'm just going to move it over to taste. This does not need to be perfect. There's no math going on here. I'm just eyeballing it. I am literally just eyeballing it. It's over. I'm pressing G plus Y to keep it locked. Excuse me, G plus X to keep it locked on the X-axis when I'm moving it. This feels a little bit more pixelated than this, so I'm going to scale it like this. And again, eyeball it, just move it over. And that's good enough. So now let's do the top part here, edit mode. I'm going to select all of these faces, just referencing how I did in my model. So go back to our project, all these faces. And then with my viewport kind of here, I'm going to do you, project from view, select this, rotate it like this, put it on this big arrow we have down here. And now, how did I do it? Looks like I kind of just scaled it like this. And look at that. That's pretty cool looking already, fellas. That's looking pretty nice. I'm liking that. So I'm going to try to scale it on, scale it on the Y-axis a little bit, because I think that looks a little better. Cool. Move it over a bit. We don't really like that. Leave it like that. Then we'll get this top face right here, and I can't see anything because I turned off overlays. Shift Alt Z to turn them back on. This face, put it over. View, project from view. Grab this, move it over. Rotate this. I'll rotate it like 90 degrees. Negative 90 degrees. My case here, your case may vary, which is fine. I'm going to isolate my model by pressing this / on my keyboard, the one next to Shift. I'm also going to turn off this modifier in edit mode so that it's not distracting me in the other arm. Rotate, move it down. And again, I am literally just eyeballing this. There's a mathematically perfect way of doing this, but personally, I don't really care. I am totally fine with doing it like this. I'm actually going to unwrap this again. View, project from view. Rotate that, scale it down a little bit. So it's looking a little bit like that. And honestly, it's pretty hard to see. Freaking hard to see that. So it's not a huge deal if it's not perfect. But I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I'm going to move it over like that. That's not perfect. Not that it needs to be, but I'll scale it. And that is good enough. That is our arm. I don't think I did anything differently in the actual model. No. Looks like that's a different shade. Oh, that's interesting. So I had this part be like more shadowed than the rest. I can do that here. So I'll select all these. Go to my UV editor. Move this up. That looks a little bit better. I see why I did that. All right, cool. And that's our arm. And this stuff is so repetitive. I really do hope you're bored. That's a good thing. So I'm going to go back to the material properties editor, new Love Chan body. I hope by watching this, you kind of just want to get doing it yourself. Because this is, again, it's not complicated at all. So I'm going to select all these front faces on jacket here. I'm actually going to hide the, I'll keep it visible in this case. And I'll do view, project from view, grab, and move this over. I think this is just, oh yeah, I think I did this a little bit different, actually. So I'm going to, for now, move all these to like that middle shading thing, right here. Just go to edit mode to see what this is looking like. Yeah, no, this one, actually it's going to be like the highlight, quote unquote. I hope you don't hear that mower. I hate mowers. They ruin so many recording sessions. Oh my God, you have no idea. I'm going to move this to this like blue shading part. I think it might even be right there, is it? We'll see. So we're gonna move these faces right here into this like blue shading part. So I'm gonna move these. Oh, you can definitely hear that mower, I'm so sorry. This right here. I think I actually did it differently on my model. Select all these. Oh no, yeah, I did. Interesting. So yeah, that's totally fine. That's one way of doing it. I think these need to get unwrapped though. So I'm going to select this face, project from view. And that's totally a messed up way of doing it, but that's fine because it's just a flat color. So you're not going to see any visible texture distortion, right? So with those selected, I'm now going to select this. And I will also select this face and this face. Actually, just these faces. Just this. Yeah. I just select these front faces right here, and then you check from view, grab these, grab both of these, and then kind of do this. Line them up. I think this is supposed to be inverted. 180, or rotated, not inverted. Yeah, there we go. It's looking a lot better. Move these around like so. And yeah, that's looking good from the front and back. I'll do it on the side. There's 3. Front / to isolate our model. You project from view. Press A to select all. And I am literally just gonna eyeball this again. Again, rotate that 180 degrees. Move this down like so. Good enough. Unisolate. Front view. Let's do the tummy. So let's select the front tummy and the back of the tummy. You project from view. Select this. I think I can just do it here. It's fine. Mower. Ignore the mower. Ignore that mower, please. Alright, it's good enough. Select this face. Edit mode. View. Project from view. Grab this face and scooch it on over. I'm just going to eyeball this again because it literally does not really matter that much. It's fine. Alright, that is imperfect, and you can make this as perfect as you'd like in your own time. I'm just showing you a little bit of how I do things. So just like this, and this face again. You don't have to worry about this side because it's mirrored. And then press U, project from view, follow selected, and put all of these in the shadowed area of my texture sheet right here. And this is just like a little, I don't know if you call that a gradient. It's not really a gradient, not a smooth gradient anyway. So I actually want these UVs to be on the same part of my UV map that the whatever this is called. This part of a sweater. Collar, that's not the collar. Sleeve. It's escaping me. The wrist, whatever. There's a word for that. I'm going to select these UVs. Actually, just the front and back UVs. Then I'm gonna project them from view again. Not press I, press U, project from view. Then move them over. Right here. And tab to see how this is looking. It's fine. It looks fine. I'm gonna press G, X to slide them over, see if that looks any better. I don't like, I actually like that. As is, cool. So I'm gonna go to tab, edit mode. I'm noticing that this did not come with me. Oops. You project from view, grab this, scooch it over. I'm gonna see what this one's scaled like. Kind of just like copy it by selecting both faces and then going to the UV editor, going to face select, and just line this up roughly because you're never gonna actually see these at the same time. But then I see that's kind of causing a weird issue visually, so I'm gonna move this over. So it looks like that, which looks pretty good. Tab, select face, U, project from view, grab this, scooch it on over, move it down. Shift Alt Z, Shift Alt Z, scooch. Scale is wrong, so scale it. Scale it up a little bit, over. Scale it a little bit more, maybe just on one of the axes. I mean, it's fine. G, Z, again, I'm just do this to taste. Do not worry about every last action I'm making here. It really does not need to be perfect. I hope that is a big takeaway people have about UVs, is that they're kind of just whatever. You just gotta do whatever. We're gonna say that's good enough for now. You can mess with that more in your own time. So that's how she's looking so far. And now let's move on to the next part. Just kidding, there's some issues back here. So we gotta go slash to hide this and fix these up. Oh yeah, because these also have lines too. So that got a lot of mileage, didn't it? Interesting. So I'm going to isolate our model, our final model here. Click these faces. And again, these can be messed up because this is flat shaded on my model here. So I'm just gonna move them over like so to this like quote unquote highlight part. It's looking good, looking good. Now we want to do this top part here. So I'm gonna select these two. Front view by pressing one on my numpad, project from view, grab them, move them to this area. That looks fine. Tab, this view, project from view, grab them in this area. It doesn't look right because it's you get that black pixels we don't actually want here in this case. A scale and G, Z, move it over like so. Not perfect. Good enough. Get out of this orthographic view, and you're gonna see that I actually inset these faces a little bit here. We can do that really quickly. So I'm actually gonna press tab, then isolate our model front slash on our keyboard, and then with my model isolate, I'm gonna select this, and then I'm going to press E. Then I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to even move my mouse. And then I'll press S to scale that in like that. With this scaled in, I want these on 0. So I'm going to click this vert. I'm going to shift click this vert. N, and move these over. So making sure I have global selected here, I'm going to click on X, set that to 0. So with global, these are now on 0, which is great. Now I'm going to press 3 on my keyboard, so I'm on face select all these faces. Then do U, project from view, grab this and put it in this shadowed area right here. See how that's looking? That's pretty good. I like that. Sweet. Then I'm going to go back to edge select. So we're going to click on, go back to edit mode, press 2, select all these edges, and then press E to extrude down. Press E, then Z, so it's like perfectly extruded down. And press / get out of that view. That's looking pretty good. There we go. It's looking a lot better. So that is the torso finished. So now let's do the neck here, which is very easy. Just select the neck here, the neck model. First tab. Well, actually, we need the material first. So get that material on there. Then select everything with A. Then I'm just going to U, project from view, then grab it and move it to our shadowed area, if I'm remembering correctly. What does it look like? Yes. So our neck is the exact same color as the shadowed area of our jaw. So I'm going to move all these UVs to right there. And that looks pretty awesome. So that's done. Super easy. The only things left are the hair and this waist section. So I'm going to select the waist and isolate it by pressing / on my keyboard. And I'm going to make sure that in edit mode, we're not going to see the other half of it. Well, we'll keep the other half visible, but obviously we want the material on here. So I'm going to do that, which you should definitely know how to do by now. And I'm going to press tab to enter edit mode. I'm going to select all these front faces like so. I don't even remember how I did this. We're about to figure out. Project from view. Select this up here. And that's looking pretty good. I'm now remembering that I actually applied my mirror modifier on my model here because this is an asymmetrical texture. The lines from one side of the waist to the other are not like perfectly symmetrical. So I'll show you how to do that in this case here after I'm done doing the UVs, because otherwise it would be super, super annoying. So I'm going to do this side here. Go to the right view, U, project from view. And I'll grab these UVs, and I already know that these go right here, like so. I'll try to line them up generally, how these are set up. Wow, that looks terrible. Wow, what the heck did I do here? So again, maybe not the greatest map in the world, but this is gonna happen with everybody when you're learning UVs, and it's fine. It is a learning experience. I'm gonna move these down. So this up like that. Then I think and again, I'm just moving vertices. So I'm pressing 1 and just moving vertices around. I'm going to press Y to move these a bit down like that. So now this is nice and lined up. I'm going to go to the back view. Again, I'm not going to make this perfect. This is not about perfection, but I'm going to select all these back faces. Right here, U, project from view, and I'm going to grab this and line it up like this. Make sure it's lined up with these as well, as best as I can. Put this kind of at the center like this, just to see what that looks like. This is clearly supposed to be down here. I did some weird stuff on this UV map. Don't do this. Oh boy. But that's fine. You know, that is how learning works. So I'm literally just selecting these verts, box selecting G plus Y. Just like we've been doing in 3D viewport. I'm not doing anything special here. Sometimes you do need to do weird things like this, but other times this can be totally avoided by just having a UV map done before you make your texture. Because that's the problem with this texture. I believe I did it the other way around, where I made a texture, then I tried to do a UV map on top of that. That is not ideal. I wouldn't recommend that especially when you're starting out, because you get weird stuff like this, where it's like they don't line up. It's very strange. And you have to do some weird stuff like this. But yeah, so I'm going to say that is definitely misaligned still. Again, box selecting and then pressing G plus Y. Excuse me, G plus. Yeah, no, G plus Y. I didn't misspeak. That is correct. That's looking all right. I'm gonna go to this box, bottom part, box like this. G plus, box like this, then press G plus Y. That looks good enough. All right, so now I'm gonna select right here, press U, actually I'll go this orthographic view, U, project from view, and I'll get this, and I'm going to now make sure this is hidden in object mode, or excuse me, edit mode, so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna press this little thing on our modifier here to make sure that's hidden in edit mode. And I'm just going to line this up by moving our verts around. I'll move the bottom verts around. It's kind of lined up. This is what I'm talking about, that weird pixelization. This could be avoided if I set up my texture map a little bit differently. But again, this happens to everyone. It's a learning process when you're starting out. And it's certainly not something I will try to do ever again. Try to make your UV maps before you make your texture maps, folks. Let this be a learning lesson. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you can hear that weed whacker outside. I apologize. If you can't, I'm just sound like a crazy person, which is... That's cool. I love that. So I'm going to select this face. U, project from view. I think this is just blue, honestly. I'm just going to move it into the blue area. And that's our torso. But as I just said, this torso was actually actually, we should do the top part here. These top two faces, so like this one. U, project from view. What color did I do these? I did them blue, so I'll move these into the blue zone, like so. There we go. Unisolate our model. It's looking pretty good, Oh yeah, I have to do the bottom part, so I'm going to isolate again. It's like this bottom face. It's just one face. Yep. So U, project from view. This is actually a shadowed color, interestingly. So we press G to move this over to what I assume was the shadowed area, which is probably right here. Yeah, that looks good. Cool. So I'm going to unisolate by pressing / on my keyboard. That's looking pretty good. I'm tempted to shadow this face. I'm going to isolate again because I'm curious what that would look like if I move this into this shadowed area. That looks kind of weird. I can see why I didn't do that. You can see the model disappeared when I undid it there. That's just a bug. Just isolate your model again. You should be fine. Yeah, that looks fine. All right, so we just modeled, or excuse me, UV'd our waist. That is now done, except we want this asymmetry. So to do that, to make sure that it's not just like exactly the same on both sides, it's going to look a little bit better if this is asymmetrical. And I'm noticing this is a little bit incorrect. Select all these faces and move them like this. That's how that's supposed to be, which means I have to change these as well. So I'm going to select the, wait, no, I need to select all three of these. So select this. Go to vertex select, grab all of them, and make sure they're aligned by pressing G plus Z. Like that. Oh, that's definitely messed up now. Select these bottom ones, G plus Z, align them up. And that is, this a bit, G plus Z. That is far from perfect, and there are better ways of doing that. But again, this is a tutorial. You can take all the time you want in the world to make this as perfect as possible. I'm trying to avoid that for the sake of time. So we're going to say that this is good enough for the waist. And again, if you want to reference the final 3D model I made here, please consider getting the Gumroad course, because this is something you can look at and reference directly, like the actual blend file and 3D model here. So with all that out of the way, now that the UVs on this are done, you want to make them asymmetrical, because in our texture map, you can see we didn't just have half. If we wanted just half of something, we could like do something like what we did with the feet here, where because the feet are symmetrical on both sides, like this is the same as this, we only did half of the feet, and we just put our UVs on top of each other. But you can see here, if we select all of our UVs here, we select all of our faces, rather, in the 3D viewport, you're going to see that the UVs don't actually use this texture space, so it's just being wasted. So to fix that, I'm going to go to our mirror modifier here in the object mode. So make sure you're in object mode, because you can't do this in edit mode, and go to apply. So with our mirror modifier applied, we can now go to our front view, and select half of our model. And I'm just going to do this by doing a box selection like this. And then I'll just select the rest of the faces here manually like that. I think that's just the front ones. Perfect. Then I'm going to scale this -1. So I'm going to scale, right, pressing S. Then I'm going to press X and do -1 right here. -1. Then I'm going to move these by pressing G plus X. Move them over. This. So now this is asymmetrical, which just looks and feels a little better. So that's what it looks like when it's symmetrical. This is what it looks like when it's asymmetrical. It just looks a little bit better. I'll do that on the back as well, on the butt here. So go to the back view. Select all of these. Cool. Then S to scale, X to scale on the X-axis. Do -1. G plus X to move them over. Like so. We're noticing a bit of an issue here. I'm going to have to select these verts and just move them on in. And that's fine. That is totally fine. And that's how I'd recommend the workflow, where you do it mirrored first and then you do it asymmetrically, because it's just going to end up saving you time. So that is the waist done. The only thing that remains is the hair here, right? Before I do that, I'm actually noticing this is supposed to be shadowed. So I'm going to select all these faces right here, shift select all of them, then grab them and move them into this shadowed area. Yeah, that looks a lot nicer. I like that. All right, cool. So to do the UVs on the hair here, I am going to want to isolate our model by clicking on it and pressing / here. And to make this process a lot easier, I'm going to want to separate the hair from the face. So to do that, I'm going to press Tab. Then I'm going to select all the faces on the face and like the under jaw here. So I'm going to click all of these. Make sure to not miss these ones up top. I'm going to press Z and go to solid so I can clearly see what I'm doing. Select all of these faces. So with all of those faces selected, I'm going to press P on my keyboard and click selection. So now you're going to see that this face is a separate object from the rest of the hair, which is going to make our lives a lot easier. We'll go back into rendered view and I'll click on our head model and press H to hide it. Then we just have our hair to work with. So to do the hair, first of all, I kind of just want to have the base color be accurate. I'm going to press Tab, select all the faces on my hair by pressing A, then I'll do U, and then unwrap. So then we're going to have a really roughly unwrapped version of our hair. I'm going to select all in our UV editor and press G to move that over, then S to scale it down, like so. And I'll move this into the top right of our hair like that. So now our hair is at the very least the right color. Now I want to press Tab here and select all of these front faces of our hair, like so. So I'm referencing what I did in our final model here. I'm going to select all of these front faces, like so. Then I'm going to press U on my keyboard and do unwrap. And we can see, excuse me, I'm going to press U on my keyboard. I'm going to undo that and press project from view. Then I'm going to move this to where the hair highlights are on our model. So that's going to be right here. Then I'm going to line them up to kind of how I did it on my model. So I think that turned out pretty good. I'm going to scale it just like we've been scaling everything in the 3D viewport and in the UV editor. This, and that's looking pretty good. All right, so if I take the bigger view here, I'm going to see that this actually seems a bit smaller, so I'm going to scale this up a little bit like this, and that's looking pretty good. Looks like this ends a bit earlier on my model, so I'm going to press G and C to move it over. I'll actually scale this on the X-axis a little bit, so that is a bit wider like this. Generally like that. This seems a bit high though, so I'm going to move this down. This, kind of like that. You don't need to make this perfect, and honestly, that seems like it's good enough for now. So with that out of the way, you're going to notice that we have all these shadowed regions in our hair, right? And honestly, all I'm doing to get these shadowed regions is so easy. I'm just selecting faces, right? So I'm selecting all of these faces below Love Chan here. So, and these are just done in big chunks. So we'll start in the back of the hair here. So I'm going to select this face, this face, this face, this face, this face, this face, and these faces, like so. I'll select all these faces too. I'll press U, project from view, and I'll move all these faces into the shadowed area, like this. So now that that's done, I want to do these parts in the shadowed area as well. So I'm going to click on this head. Or this, I'm saying face, these are probably, they are faces, but they're tries, whatever. So I'm going to click on these tries, press U, project from view, move them, go to face select in our UV editor and just move them into the shadowed area like that. This is already looking really close. Then we want to select these faces right here, U, project from view, and move them down like so. So now I'm going to go to the opposite side of my model, select these faces, press U, project from view, grab them, move them, scale them, etc., etc. And now it's already looking really close. It's pretty cool. I can already see that there's some differences between our model and my reference here. It looks like I should probably move this out. This just happens sometimes in your process. You're never done modeling, really. I'm going to move this over a bit like that. It looks like these are in shadowed as well. So I'm going to, my front view, select these faces, then U, project from view, just move them into shadow. That, do the same on this side. U, project from view, move them into shadow. That. It's going to look a little weird because we don't have a face here, of course, which looks a little odd. But we can also see that these, these faces actually have like a shadow on them. And you might be wondering how I did that. I literally just did U, project from view, grabbed this face in the UV editor, moved it, and rotated it like this. Rotate like this. I'm going to press Shift Alt Z so I can hide overlay so I can see what I'm doing in the 3D viewport. And it literally is just like that. It's nothing fancy. Just a fun little UV trick that you can get away with when you have flat shading like this. Again, this looks weird because we have no face. So I'm going to select this, as in by face I mean like an actual face, not like a 3D face in 3D. So I'm going to do this one as well. UV project from view, grab this and rotate it like so. And there we go. That's also shadowed as well. It's looking pretty close. Let's go to the back of our hair to see if this is kind of the same idea. This is kind of the stuff that's going to happen when you make your turnaround drawing. You're going to notice there's certain shading things you did with the highlights and shadows in your model. And you're going to have to come to creative solutions to how to actually get that to look the way it does in 3D. And that's one of the most fun parts of this entire process, trust me. So I actually want these not in shadow. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to select my hair now because that's looking pretty darn similar. And press front slash on my keyboard so that's back. And I hid my face here. So to unhide all, if you accidentally hid something you want to reveal it again, you can press Alt plus H on your keyboard to reveal everything, but I don't want my reference and I don't want my skeleton here, so I'm going to click myself and hide it. And look at that, we've done all the UVs on Lovechan. That's amazing. She looks a little funky because her hair proportions look weird to me. And in order to find proportional issues, it's often great to just reveal your reference again. Like I just press Alt H again to reveal my reference, go to the front view, then switch between viewport shading mode when you press Alt Z so it's transparent and kind of just click between these. And by doing that, I can see that my eyes should be a little bit more over and that my hair is still a little bit big. So I'm gonna, with using my reference, I'm gonna go to edit mode and just move things over that line up a bit better with my hair, like so. Then to fix her face, I'm going to back to this view. I can see that the eyes should be a bit over, so she looks a little less derpy, maybe a bit bigger. So I'm going to press Tab, select all these front faces. Do I need to do that? Yeah, I'll select all these front faces. I had to think about it. Actually, I don't need to select these two. I'll select all these front faces because this is just flat shaded, so those don't matter. Same with those two. Those are just flat changes, so they don't matter. Then I'll go to my UV editor and scale this around a little bit. So it lines up with my reference a bit more. So again, I just press S, then Z. So I'm scaling this to make it a little bit wider like that. G plus Z to move it over like that. I'm going to compare it to my reference by doing the press Alt C in solid view and just compare. It looks like the eyes should still be a bit bigger. So I'm going to go back to this view, scale this up a little bit. Yeah, scale this up. This does not need to be perfect, but why not try to get it a little bit more accurate, you know? Scale this up a little bit more even. G plus C. And that's looking a lot better, actually. I really do like those proportions more. I'm gonna move around my hair model because I kind of like this looking a little bit higher. Move these up with G plus C. And these are just kind of proportional changes you always are gonna go through. This is something that's never ending. You always want to refine it more and more. Yeah, let's go to the side view compared to our reference. This might look crazy different, actually. No, not really. I'll line this up a little bit more. This doesn't need to be perfect, though. The reference is just a reference. You're going to want to go in 3D and see what things are looking like there, because you can have something perfectly aligned with your reference and still look weird in 3D sometimes. I'll move this over to like this, just to kind of refine our hair a little bit more. This looks a little bit weird. I'm going to select this face. I don't even think I did this in my model, but screw it. We're going to try something new. U, project from view. Make sure I'm lined up. U, project from view. This face. Try to do my funny little shadow trick here. Rotate this all the way around. Shift Alt C to hide that. Scale this down. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. I love this trick. It's so fun. And ideally, I should not have even done it like this. I should have done literally what I did here with the hair shading. Other than the highlight, I really don't need all this space for just pink pixels. It's such a waste of UV space. But again, this is the things you learn as you continue to make more and more 3D models and more UV maps. It's like this one as well. Why do I not? Oh, Shift Alt C. Alt C, so I don't have that transparency. Direct from view. Grab this. And if I'm going kind of fast, I'm really not. If you've watched this entire video, this should all be pretty obvious by now. So Shift Alt C, hide overlays, rotate like that. That looks pretty nice. I like how that looks. So that is our entire 3D model UV'd. You can do way more time. You can spend way more time with this and get it as perfect looking as you want. But in the next video, we're gonna talk about rigging. Thank you so much for sitting all the way through this. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember to check out the Gumroad version of this course, which is linked in the video description below, and get it today if you want the absolute best value and bang for your buck on it. Please comment below and like the video if you find this series helpful, and subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications and you never miss new content arriving on this channel. It helps a ton. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.